The 1970s killed the muscle car. Insurance companies strangled them with premiums. Emissions regulations choked their engines, safety mandates added weight, and fuel crises made big blocks politically incorrect. But before the muscle car era died completely, Detroit built one final generation of machines that fought against the inevitable. Today, we're counting down 8 muscle cars out of the 1970s that were canceled. Legendary nameplates and performance packages that couldn't survive the decade's hostile environment. These weren't just discontinued models, they were the last gasps of American performance before everything changed. This is the story of muscle cars that ran out of time. Number 8, 1970 AMC Rebel Machine. The AMC Rebel Machine arrived in 1970 as American Motors' audacious attempt to compete with Detroit's Big Three in the muscle car wars. AMC had never been serious players in performance. They built economy cars and sensible transportation for practical Americans. But in 1970, AMC decided to shock the automotive world with the Rebel Machine, a wildly styled muscle car that proved the little company from Kenosha could build something genuinely fast and genuinely outrageous. The 390 cubic inch V8 produced 340 horsepower, serious power delivered through AMC's sturdiest drivetrain components. AMC fitted the Rebel Machine with a ram air hood scoop that fed cold air directly to the carburetor, improving power and creating an aggressive appearance that announced the machine's performance intentions. The 4-speed manual transmission was standard equipment, and AMC fitted a limited slip differential with aggressive gearing that made the machine quick off the line. The suspension received heavy-duty components, including stiffer springs and larger anti-roll bars that improved handling without completely destroying ride quality. Performance was genuinely impressive. The Rebel Machine could hit 60 miles per hour in the mid-6-second range and run quarter miles in the low 14-second bracket at speeds around 95 miles per hour. Those numbers matched or beat many more famous muscle cars from 1970. The Rebel Machine proved AMC could build fast cars when they tried, competing directly with Chevelle, GTOs, and Roadrunners, despite coming from a manufacturer nobody associated with performance. The Rebel Machine's styling was deliberately outrageous. AMC offered it initially only in red, white, and blue paint, with enormous graphics and bold striping that made it impossible to miss. The patriotic color scheme was polarizing. Some buyers loved the bold statement, while others found it embarrassingly gaudy. The machine featured a functional ram air hood, with dramatic scoops, bold graphics along the sides, and enough visual drama to compete with any Detroit muscle car for attention. Later in the production year, AMC allowed buyers to order more subdued colors, recognizing that not everyone wanted to drive a rolling American flag. But the Rebel Machine arrived at exactly the wrong moment. Insurance companies were beginning their assault on muscle cars, and young buyers faced premiums they couldn't afford. The fuel crisis was looming, and Americans were starting to question whether big displacement performance made sense. AMC's limited dealer network meant the machine never achieved wide visibility, and the company's economy car reputation made performance buyers skeptical. Sales were disappointing. AMC built fewer than 2,000 Rebel Machines for 1970. AMC canceled the Rebel Machine after just 1 year, recognizing that muscle cars didn't fit their corporate strategy or their customers' expectations. The company refocused on the compact and efficient vehicles that had always been their strength, abandoning their brief performance experiment. Today, surviving Rebel Machines are highly collectible because of their rarity and because they represent AMC's bold attempt to compete in a market where they didn't belong. The Rebel Machine proved that even small manufacturers could build genuine muscle cars, but it also proved that building them and selling them successfully were completely different challenges. Number 7, 1971, Pontiac GTO Judge. The Pontiac GTO Judge arrived in 1969 as Pontiac's answer to buyers who wanted their muscle cars loud, proud, and impossible to ignore. The Judge package added wild graphics, bold colors, and performance equipment to the already legendary GTO, creating something genuinely outrageous that defined late 60s muscle car excess. The Judge succeeded commercially in 1969 and 1970, but by 1971 the party was ending and Pontiac knew it. The 455 cubic inch HO58 in the 1971 Judge produced 335 horsepower under the new SAE net rating system. Less impressive numbers than previous years, but still genuine muscle car power. The LS5 engine featured round port cylinder heads, a hot camshaft, and free-flowing exhaust that delivered strong performance despite increasing emissions restrictions. Pontiac matched the engine with a 4-speed manual transmission and heavy-duty drivetrain components that could handle the 455's substantial torque. The suspension received performance tuning with firmer springs and shocks that gave the Judge handling that matched its straight-line speed. Performance remained impressive despite the era's challenges. The 1971 Judge could hit 60 in the mid-6-second range and complete quarter miles in the low 14-second bracket. More impressive was the engine's tremendous torque that made the Judge feel faster than the number suggested. The 455 produced over 500 pound-feet of torque, giving the Judge brutal acceleration that overwhelmed the rear tires at will. This was old-school muscle, massive displacement, simple mechanics, and tire-smoking power. The massive torque peak arrived low in the RPM range, meaning the Judge delivered devastating punch from idle to redline without the peaky power delivery that characterized smaller, high-revving engines. The 4-speed manual transmission featured Hurst linkage that provided positive mechanical shifts with short throws and precise engagement that gave drivers complete control over the Judge's prodigious power. The rear axle used Pontiac's safe T-Track limited slip differential with aggressive gearing ratios that multiplied the engine's torque advantage, allowing the Judge to launch hard and maintain strong acceleration through the gears. The suspension tuning struck a balance between handling capability and straight-line traction, with spring rates and shock valving calibrated to keep the rear tires planted during hard launches, while maintaining reasonable control during cornering. The front disc brakes and rear drums provided adequate stopping power for the Judge's substantial weight and high speeds, though enthusiasts wished Pontiac had offered 4-wheel discs for a car this quick. The exhaust system featured dual outlets with minimal restriction, creating a deep, aggressive exhaust note that announced the Judge's presence blocks away and provided audible confirmation of the 455's power. The carburetor was a Rochester Quadra J 4-barrel unit that balanced performance with reasonable fuel economy, providing strong acceleration while avoiding the terrible mileage some muscle cars suffered. The ignition system used Pontiac's reliable distributor and coil setup that provided consistent spark, even during sustained high RPM operation, ensuring the Judge ran smoothly, whether cruising or accelerating hard. The cooling system featured a heavy-duty radiator and robust fan that kept temperatures under control, even during aggressive driving in hot weather, addressing overheating issues that plagued some high-performance engines. The transmission tunnel and floor structure were reinforced to handle the tremendous torque the 455 generated, preventing flex and ensuring power reached the rear wheels efficiently without losses to chassis movement. The Judge's power-to-weight ratio was exceptional for 1971, with the big block engine's output overwhelming the intermediate body's weight to create acceleration that felt brutal and uncompromising. The rear tires were wide for the era, but still inadequate for the Judge's power, meaning traction was always limited by tire technology rather than engine output. The 455 could easily overpower even the stickiest rubber available. The engine's durability was legendary, with the 455 capable of withstanding sustained abuse that would destroy lesser motors, thanks to robust internals and conservative engineering that prioritized reliability alongside performance. The Judge could maintain highway speeds effortlessly with the engine barely working. The massive displacement and torque, meaning cruising at 70 or 80 miles per hour, required minimal throttle input and produced surprisingly reasonable fuel economy for such a large motor. The overall driving experience was visceral and engaging, with the Judge delivering raw, unfiltered muscle car performance that connected drivers directly to the mechanical violence happening under the hood through steering feedback, exhaust sound, and acceleration forces that modern cars can't replicate. The Judge's styling in 1971 was slightly more restrained than previous years, but still unmistakable. The Judge featured distinctive graphics, bold striping, and the trademark rear spoiler that had become the package's visual signature. Pontiac toned down some of the wildest color combinations, recognizing that buyers were becoming more conservative as muscle cars attracted unwanted attention from insurance companies and law enforcement. But the Judge remained visually distinctive. Nobody would mistake it for a plain GTO, or mistake its intentions. But 1971 was the wrong time for muscle car excess. Insurance companies had declared war on performance cars, charging premiums that made muscle cars unaffordable for young buyers who'd been their core market. The Judge's outrageous styling attracted exactly the insurance scrutiny Pontiac wanted to avoid. The emissions regulations and safety standards were getting stricter every year, and Pontiac knew that building cars like the Judge was becoming unsustainable. Sales collapsed as buyers either couldn't afford insurance or chose more subtle performance cars that didn't attract attention. Pontiac canceled the Judge package after 1971, recognizing that the era of flamboyant muscle cars had ended. The base GTO continued for a few more years in increasingly watered-down forms, but the Judge was finished. Today, 1971 Judges are the rarest and most collectible Judge models because they represent the package's final year and the last moment when Pontiac offered truly outrageous performance in a package that refused to apologize. The Judge died because the world changed, not because Pontiac stopped knowing how to build exciting cars. Number 6, 1971, Dodge Super Bee. The Dodge Super Bee had been the working man's muscle car since 1968, a no-frills, high-performance intermediate that stripped away luxury to deliver maximum power for minimum money. The Super Bee represented pure muscle car philosophy: big engine, minimal equipment, and prices that made performance accessible to buyers who couldn't afford Roadrunners or Chargers loaded with options. But by 1971, that philosophy was dying along with the muscle car era. The Super Bee offered multiple engine options for 1971, ranging from the 383 cubic inch V8, producing 300 horsepower, up to the legendary 440 cubic inch V8 with 375 horsepower. The big block options delivered genuine muscle car performance despite increasingly restrictive emissions equipment. Dodge fitted the Super Bee with heavy-duty suspensions, 4-speed manual transmissions, and all the mechanical components needed to handle serious power. The Super Bee remained true to its roots. This was a performance car for drivers who cared about going fast rather than looking luxurious. Performance was strong across the engine range. Super Bees with the 440 could hit 60 in the low 6-second range and complete quarter miles in the high 13-second bracket at speeds around 100 miles per hour. Even the base 383 delivered respectable performance that embarrassed many competitors. The Super Bee proved that muscle car performance didn't require the most expensive engines or the fanciest packages. Sometimes straightforward engineering and aggressive gearing were enough. The Super Bee's styling for 1971 was bolder and more aggressive than previous years. Dodge redesigned the intermediate body, giving it more dramatic lines and bolder proportions. The Super Bee featured distinctive graphics, including the cartoon bee logo, that had become the model's trademark. The styling was modern and aggressive, representing Mopar muscle at its visual peak. But that aggressive styling attracted exactly the insurance company attention Dodge wanted to avoid. Dodge faced a difficult decision in 1971. The company was building multiple muscle car lines: the Super Bee, the Charger RT, the Challenger RT, and sales were collapsing across all of them. Insurance costs were killing muscle cars, and Dodge needed to consolidate its performance offerings. The company decided to focus on the Charger nameplate and discontinue the Super Bee, recognizing that maintaining multiple muscle car lines was no longer economically viable. The Super Bee was canceled after 1971, with its performance mission absorbed into Charger models. Dodge's decision made business sense. They couldn't sustain multiple muscle car lines in a dying market, but enthusiasts mourned the Super Bee's loss because it represented muscle car values at their purest. Today, 1971 Super Bees are collectible because they're the final year of a model that defined working-class muscle. The Super Bee died not because it wasn't good, but because the market for straightforward, affordable muscle cars had evaporated. Number 5, 1972, Buick GS Stage 1. Buick seemed like an unlikely muscle car manufacturer. The brand built comfortable, luxurious cars for successful Americans who valued refinement over raw performance. But Buick's GS Stage 1 proved that luxury brands could build genuinely quick cars when they tried. The Stage 1 package combined Buick's smooth 455 cubic inch V8 with aggressive tuning and performance equipment, creating something genuinely fast, wrapped in upscale Buick luxury. Performance remained impressive despite the era's challenges. The 1971 Judge could hit 60 in the mid 6-second range and complete quarter miles in the low 14-second bracket. More impressive was the engine's tremendous torque that made the Judge feel faster than the number suggested. The 455 produced over 500 pound-feet of torque, giving the Judge brutal acceleration that overwhelmed the rear tires at will. This was old-school muscle, massive displacement, simple mechanics, and tire smoking power. The engine delivered its power with a smooth, linear surge that built relentlessly as the RPMs climbed, providing the kind of effortless acceleration that only big displacement V8s could deliver. The 4-speed manual transmission featured positive mechanical shifts with well-chosen ratios that kept the engine in its power band during aggressive driving. The limited slip differential was essential equipment for putting the 455's massive torque to the ground, though even with traction aids, the Judge could break the rear tires loose at will from a rolling start. The exhaust note was deep and menacing, with the distinctive Pontiac rumble that announced the Judge's presence from blocks away. The braking system featured front discs and rear drums that provided adequate stopping power for the era, though bringing nearly 4,000 pounds of accelerating Judge to a halt required planning and firm pedal pressure. The suspension tuning struck a balance between handling and ride quality, allowing the Judge to corner with reasonable composure while remaining comfortable enough for daily driving. The steering was slow by modern standards, but provided adequate feedback and control for spirited driving on winding roads. The Judge's performance advantage over base GTOs was noticeable but not overwhelming. The real appeal was the complete package of power, handling, and distinctive styling, rather than just straight-line acceleration. Trap speeds at the end of quarter-mile runs typically exceeded 95 miles per hour, demonstrating that the Judge wasn't just quick off the line, but maintained strong acceleration through higher speeds. The fuel economy was predictably terrible, with real-world driving typically returning single-digit miles per gallon figures that made the Judge expensive to operate even when gasoline was cheap. The performance was genuinely impressive. The GS Stage 1 could hit 60 miles per hour in the low 6-second range and complete quarter miles in the high 13-second bracket, numbers that matched or beat more famous muscle cars. More impressive was how effortlessly the Stage 1 delivered that performance. The massive torque meant brutal acceleration with minimal fuss, and the refined drivetrain made the GS feel more sophisticated than crude muscle cars from other brands. This was gentleman's muscle, powerful but polished. The GS Stage 1's styling was restrained compared to flashy competitors. Buick used subtle badging, functional scoops, and conservative graphics that suggested performance without screaming for attention. The GS featured Buick's handsome intermediate body, with distinctive styling details that set it apart from plain Skylarks. The interior was pure Buick, comfortable seats, quality materials, and upscale trim that made the GS feel more expensive than equivalent Chevelles or GTOs. This was muscle for mature buyers who'd outgrown flashy graphics and loud exhausts. But Buick's management was uncomfortable with muscle cars. The brand's identity centered on luxury and refinement, and performance cars didn't fit that image. Insurance companies were crushing muscle car sales, and Buick's typical customers weren't buying high-performance intermediates. The GS Stage 1 competed for attention with Chevelle SS models within GM's lineup, and Buick decided that investing in muscle cars didn't make strategic sense when the market was dying. Buick canceled the GS Stage 1 after 1972, refocusing on the luxury and comfort that had always been their strength. The GS nameplate continued for a few more years in increasingly watered-down forms, but genuine muscle car performance from Buick was finished. Today, GS Stage 1s are highly collectible because they're rare and because they represent Buick's brief experiment with serious performance. The Stage 1 proved that luxury brands could build genuinely quick cars, but it also proved that brand identity matters more than capability when markets shift. Number 4. 1973 Chevrolet Chevelle SS454. The Chevrolet Chevelle SS had been one of America's defining muscle cars since the mid-60s, offering big block power in mid-size packaging that created the template countless competitors copied. The SS badge meant performance, and the 454 engine option meant serious, tire-smoking power that embodied everything muscle cars represented. But by 1973, everything was changing, and even Chevrolet's legendary SS couldn't survive. The 454 cubic inch LS4 V8 produced 275 horsepower under the new net rating system, numbers that looked weak compared to previous years, but represented genuine power once you understood the new measurement standards. The LS4 featured lower compression to run on unleaded fuel, restrictive exhaust to meet emission standards, and all the compromises 1973 required. But it still produced over 400 pound-feet of torque, and that grunt made the Chevelle feel quicker than the horsepower number suggested. Chevrolet offered 4-speed manual or automatic transmissions, with most buyers choosing automatics as performance cars became more civilized. Performance was decent for 1973 despite the era's challenges. The Chevelle SS 454 could hit 60 in the mid-7-second range and complete quarter miles in the mid-15-second bracket. Those numbers were slower than muscle cars from 5 years earlier, but they remained respectable for 1973 when most cars were genuinely slow. The Chevelle proved that even with emissions equipment and lower compression, American V8s could still deliver satisfying performance. The Chevelle's styling for 1973 featured the colonnade body that Chevrolet introduced to meet new safety standards. The fixed B-pillars and structural reinforcements added weight and changed the Chevelle's proportions, making it look heavier and less athletic than previous generations. The SS package added distinctive graphics, functional scoops, and performance details, but the overall appearance was more mature and less aggressive than earlier SS models. Chevrolet was moving the Chevelle toward personal luxury rather than pure performance, and the styling reflected that shift. Chevrolet faced difficult decisions about the Chevelle's future. The muscle car market had collapsed, and buyers wanted luxury features more than raw performance. Insurance costs made genuine muscle cars commercially unviable, and emissions regulations were getting stricter every year. The company decided to de-emphasize performance and reposition the Chevelle as a personal luxury car, competing with Monte Carlos and Grand Prix rather than pure muscle. The SS package faded after 1973, with the 454 engine disappearing from Chevelle option lists. Chevrolet kept the Chevelle itself alive through the 70s, but it evolved into something completely different from the muscle car that had defined the nameplate. Today, 1973, Chevelle SS 454s are collectible as the last year Chevrolet offered genuine big block muscle in the legendary nameplate. They represent the moment when muscle cars transformed into something else, when performance took a backseat to luxury, efficiency, and changing market demands. Number 3, 1974, Plymouth Roadrunner 440. The Plymouth Roadrunner had defined affordable muscle since 1968, offering big engines and minimal frills at prices that made performance accessible to working-class buyers. The cartoon bird logo, the beep-beep horn, and the stripped-down interior made the Roadrunner instantly recognizable and genuinely beloved. But by 1974, the Roadrunner was losing its identity as Plymouth struggled to adapt to a market that no longer wanted raw muscle. The 440 cubic inch V8 produced 275 horsepower under net ratings. The last year Plymouth offered this legendary engine. The 440 featured all the emissions equipment and compromises 1974 required, but it still delivered strong torque and satisfying performance. Plymouth matched the engine with heavy-duty transmissions and drivetrain components that could handle the power. The Roadrunner remained mechanically competent, even as its market disappeared. Performance was adequate for 1974 despite the era's restrictions. The Roadrunner 440 could hit 60 in the mid-7-second range and complete quarter miles in the high 15-second bracket. Those numbers were slower than previous Roadrunners, but they remained respectable for the mid-70s when most cars were genuinely sluggish. The Roadrunner proved you could still have fun even with emissions equipment and safety regulations limiting performance. The Roadrunner's styling for 1974 featured Plymouth's intermediate body that looked more mature and less aggressive than previous generations. Plymouth was moving the Roadrunner upmarket, adding luxury features and comfort options that contradicted the model's stripped-down heritage. The cartoon graphics became more subdued. The interior gained options that would have been unthinkable on earlier Roadrunners, and the overall character shifted from raw muscle to civilized performance. Plymouth was trying to save the Roadrunner by making it appeal to buyers who wanted comfort along with their performance. But that strategy killed what made the Roadrunner special. The model's identity had always been about affordable, no-frills performance, big engines and basic packages at prices young buyers could afford. By adding luxury features and raising prices, Plymouth turned the Roadrunner into just another midsize coupe. The muscle car market had collapsed, and Plymouth couldn't sustain a standalone performance model anymore. The company decided to discontinue the Roadrunner as a distinct muscle car, absorbing its role into other Plymouth models. The Roadrunner nameplate continued beyond 1974, but not as a true muscle car. Plymouth used the name on various vehicles through the 70s, but they were performance cars in name only. The genuine Roadrunner, the affordable, stripped-down muscle machine, died after 1974. Today, 1974 Roadrunner 440s are collectible, as the last year Plymouth offered the legendary engine in a car that still resembled a genuine muscle car. They represent the end of an era when working-class muscle meant something more than just graphics and appearance packages. Number 2, 1975 Oldsmobile 442. The Oldsmobile 442 nameplate had meant muscle since the mid-60s. 4-barrel carburetor, 4-speed transmission, dual exhausts, and in later years, 455 cubic inches of displacement. The 442 represented Oldsmobile's commitment to performance, proving that even a luxury-focused division could build genuinely quick cars. But by 1975, the 442 was dying, and Oldsmobile knew it couldn't save the nameplate's muscle car heritage. The 455 cubic inch V8 in 1975 produced 250 horsepower under net ratings, modest numbers that disguise the engine's substantial torque output. The 455 remained Oldsmobile's biggest, strongest engine, but emissions equipment and low compression had tamed it considerably. Oldsmobile offered primarily automatic transmissions, though 4-speed manuals remained available for traditionalists who wanted to shift their own gears. The 442's mechanical components remained robust, but the performance had been neutered by regulations and market demands. Performance was adequate but uninspiring. The 1975 442 could reach 60 miles per hour in the mid-8-second range and complete quarter miles in the high 16-second bracket. Those numbers were respectable for 1975, but disappointing for a nameplate that had once meant genuine muscle. The 442 felt heavier and slower than previous versions, a victim of added safety equipment and emissions controls that strangled performance. The 442's styling for 1975 was mature and restrained, emphasizing luxury over aggression. Oldsmobile had moved the 442 upmarket, adding comfort features and positioning it as a gentleman's performance car rather than a raw muscle machine. The graphics were subtle, the interior was plush, and the overall character suggested refinement rather than brute force. Oldsmobile was trying to preserve the 442 by redefining what it meant, but that redefinition killed the nameplate's soul. Oldsmobile faced impossible choices. The muscle car market was dead, insurance costs made traditional performance cars unsustainable, and emissions regulations were getting stricter every year. The company had invested in building a luxury brand image, and muscle cars didn't fit that strategy. The 442 was increasingly expensive to develop and market for a tiny number of buyers who still wanted traditional performance. Oldsmobile decided to discontinue the 442 as a distinct muscle car, recognizing that the nameplate's heritage couldn't overcome market realities. The 442 nameplate would return years later on various Oldsmobile models, but never again as a true muscle car. The genuine 442, big engine, performance focus, muscle car attitude, died after 1975. Today, 1975, 442s are collectible, as the last year Oldsmobile offered the nameplate as anything resembling a muscle car. They represent the end of Oldsmobile's performance heritage and the moment when luxury completely replaced muscle in the division's identity. The 442's cancellation marked the end of an era when every GM division offered genuine performance cars. Number 1, 1979, Dodge Magnum XE. The Dodge Magnum XE takes the top position because it represented the absolute final attempt to keep muscle car spirit alive at the end of the 70s. While other manufacturers had abandoned performance by the late 70s, Dodge stubbornly continued offering the Magnum XE, a personal luxury coupe with available performance options that tried to deliver muscle car excitement in an era. The Magnum XE was the last gasp, the final defiant gesture before Dodge completely surrendered to market realities. The Magnum XE offered engine options ranging from the 360 cubic inch V8, producing around 190 horsepower, up to the 400 cubic inch V8, making 195 horsepower under net ratings. These were modest numbers that revealed how thoroughly emissions regulations and fuel economy standards had neutered American V8s. But these engines still represented the largest displacements Dodge offered, and in the late 70s, any V8 option felt like resistance against the tide of downsizing and four-cylinder efficiency. Dodge offered 3-speed automatic transmissions as standard equipment with 4-speed manuals available for traditionalists who still wanted to row their own gears. Performance was modest by any objective measure. The Magnum XE with the 400 could reach 60 miles per hour in around 10 seconds and complete quarter miles in the high 17-second range. Those numbers were terrible compared to muscle cars from a decade earlier, but they were respectable for 1979 when most American cars were genuinely slow. The Magnum XE proved that even at the end of the 70s, you could still buy something with V8 power and rear-wheel drive if you were willing to accept compromised performance. The Magnum XE's styling was pure, late 70s personal luxury. Formal roofline, prominent grille, and proportions that emphasized presence over athleticism. Dodge offered bold graphics packages and appearance options that tried to create visual excitement, but the underlying body was heavy and soft. The interior featured plush seats, luxury trim, and comfort features that made the Magnum feel more like a small luxury car than a muscle coupe. Dodge was trying to appeal to buyers who wanted style and a hint of performance without the compromises genuine muscle cars required. The Magnum XE represented Dodge's last attempt to serve buyers who still wanted traditional American performance. The personal luxury coupe market was dying, killed by fuel prices, insurance costs, and changing buyer preferences. Younger buyers wanted fuel-efficient imports or didn't buy cars at all. Older buyers who'd bought muscle cars in the 60s now wanted luxury sedans or were switching to more practical vehicles. The market for V8-powered rear-wheel drive coupes had collapsed, and Dodge couldn't justify continuing the Magnum. Dodge canceled the Magnum after 1979, abandoning the muscle coupe market completely. The company would focus on front-wheel drive cars and practical vehicles through the 80s, not returning to performance until much later. The Magnum XE's cancellation marked the end of an era, the moment when Dodge admitted that traditional American performance was finished. Today, Magnum XEs are largely forgotten, despite being the final muscle-era Dodge. They represent the end of muscle car history, the last machine you could buy before everything changed completely. The Magnum XE died because the world that had created muscle cars no longer existed. These 8 muscle cars weren't just discontinued models, they were casualties of a changing world that no longer valued what they represented. Insurance companies, emissions regulations, safety standards, and fuel crises killed them one by one through the 70s, until nothing remained of the muscle car era except memories. But these cancellations weren't failures. They were last stands, final gasps of defiance before the industry surrendered completely. Today, these canceled muscle cars remind us of what we lost and why it mattered. Which of these lost legends would you resurrect if you could? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you love stories about the muscle cars that didn't survive, hit that subscribe button for more automotive history.